So how do microplastics actually end up in the human body?
So I think that's a good question. A lot of people ask that because obviously most of us don't go around in the day or the evening actually eating bits of plastic on purpose and chewing them up. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that um, macroplastics, which are big plastics, things you can see, bottles, packets, plastic bags, labels, um, when they get into the environment, whether they get into the ocean or they get into the ground, over time, they don't rot away, but they do break up into smaller pieces. They get trod upon, they get crushed by if they fall on the road and a car drives on them. There's wind, there's rain, there's ultraviolet light. There's even animals that might try to chew them and then spit them out. So over time, over years, they get broken up into smaller pieces. And those smaller pieces eventually gets broken up into even smaller pieces by some kind of bacteria. They don't get digested, they don't get eaten and turned into new nutrients, but they do get broken up into smaller pieces, kind of like sand, until you can't see them anymore. And these pieces, anything smaller than a millimeter typically, we call them microplastics. Now they continue to get broken up and broken up even until they're very, very small. And once they get very small, what happens is they get everywhere. So there have been studies done of water in the ocean, and we find that there's lots of tiny invisible molecules of microplastic there. In the soil where our crops are grown, in the UK or in any other country, there's plastic. In the air, right up until the stratosphere, in the clouds, in the rain that falls from the clouds, everywhere somebody starts to do the research and they take a sampling, they find it invisible to the human eye, but in tiny quantities, you have these microplastics. And what happens then is that they get into the food chain, because everything we eat is either meat from animals that eat plants that grew in the ground, or fish that swim in the sea, or it's the plants themselves. All of these grow in the sea, or they grow in the soil, and anything that's in the sea or the soil, they will ingest via their roots into their tissue. That tissue then directly, if we eat plants or vegetables, or indirectly if we eat meat, gets into our tissues. And so what a surprise, researchers started to look at human tissues. They found that in our body tissues, you have microplastics. In our blood, you have microplastics. In all of our organs, you have microplastics. So you have all of these tiny little bits of plastic, generally too small for you to see, which are in our bodies. And every one of these tiny little bits of plastic has with it even tinier quantities of these additive chemicals. So the plastic itself is like a delivery mechanism to bring these chemicals into our bodies. So even if you don't go out and say, I'm going to chop up a plastic bag and start eating bits of it, which of course nobody does, we're not crazy, whether you like it or not, when you eat food, when you breathe air, when you get rained upon, when you walk around, you are picking up microplastics. They're getting into your skin, they're getting into your cells, they're getting into your bloodstream, whether you want to do that or not. So that's really why plastic gets into our bodies.